The death of the middle class. One day you wake up and realize that your quality of life isn't what it used to be. Your washing machine doesn't clean your clothes properly, the dishwasher leaves dishes dirty, the toilet barely flushes, and the water heater is unreliable. Meanwhile, robocalls ring all day despite being on the do not call list. Crime is on the rise. You have to keep your car in a locked garage to prevent break-ins or theft. Your mailbox needs a lock, and a home security system has become essential. Theft in stores goes unpunished as long as the stolen amount is under $950. The cost of living has skyrocketed. A McDonald's hamburger that once cost 19 cents is now $3.89. Gas was 39 cents per gallon in 1957. Today, you're lucky to find it for $4.79. Traffic congestion has made leisurely Sunday drives a thing of the past. Single-family homes are being replaced with multifamily housing to address the growing homelessness crisis. Young couples find home ownership increasingly out of reach. In 1957, the middle class held about 62% of the nation's wealth, while in 2024, that share has fallen to around 42%. The income gap has widened, and the top 1% now owns more than 8 times the wealth of the poorest quintile. Once a global manufacturing powerhouse, the U.S. now produces only about 15.9% of the world's manufacturing output, while China leads with 31.63%. Approximately 72% of pharmaceutical ingredient manufacturing facilities supplying the U.S. market are overseas, and an estimated 40% of finished prescription drugs sold in the country are produced abroad. A significant portion of the goods Americans rely on are either fully manufactured overseas or assembled domestically using imported components. The world has changed, and so has the quality of life. How did this happen? It did not happen overnight. The decline of U.S. manufacturing and the middle class. At the end of World War II, the United States emerged as the world's dominant manufacturing powerhouse. Unlike Europe and Asia, which were left in ruins by the war, the U.S. had an intact industrial base, booming productivity, and an economic system ready to supply goods to a world in desperate need of rebuilding. To aid in the recovery of war-torn nations, the U.S. introduced the Marshall Plan in 1948, providing billions of dollars in aid to Europe. This assistance helped restore infrastructure, revive industry, and stabilize economies, ensuring that key allies could rebuild and avoid falling into economic or political turmoil. At the same time, the U.S. implemented economic barriers to shield recovering foreign industries from American manufacturing dominance. These measures included tariffs, quotas, and trade policies that limited U.S. exports and allowed European and Asian nations to develop their own manufacturing sectors without being overwhelmed by American competition. While these policies were initially intended as temporary measures to foster global economic stability, many of these trade barriers remained in place long after their original purpose had been fulfilled. Over the decades, they contributed to the decline of U.S. manufacturing, as foreign industries, once nurtured by American generosity, grew strong and began outcompeting U.S. firms. By the late 20th and early 21st centuries, these long-standing trade imbalances, combined with globalization, outsourcing, and offshoring, led to a massive shift in manufacturing jobs away from the U.S. Many American factories closed, and entire industries moved overseas, particularly to countries with lower labor costs and fewer regulations. As a result, the U.S. now faces enormous trade deficits, importing far more than it exports. In 2023 alone, the trade deficit was over $1 trillion, highlighting the stark difference between what the country produces domestically and what it relies on foreign nations to supply. Today, critical goods, including pharmaceuticals, electronics, and industrial components, are heavily dependent on foreign production, raising concerns about economic security, job loss, and national resilience. What began as an effort to rebuild the world after World War II has, decades later, contributed to the erosion of American manufacturing dominance, leaving the country vulnerable to economic pressures beyond its control. Manufacturing job losses, China effect. President Richard Nixon's 1972 decision to open diplomatic relations with China was driven by strategic and economic motives. Nixon and National Security Advisor Henry Kissinger saw engagement as a way to counter Soviet influence and integrate China into the global community, hoping it would adopt international norms. Nixon recognized that isolating the world's most populous nation was unsustainable, believing economic and diplomatic ties would encourage responsible behavior. This strategy, however, proved flawed. Instead of becoming a responsible stakeholder, China used its global integration to expand economic and political power while maintaining authoritarian control and engaging in human rights abuses. Aggressive actions like South China Sea militarization, intellectual property theft, and influence in global organizations have raised concerns that China seeks to reshape the global order. Nixon's gamble underestimated the Chinese Communist Party's ambitions. Economic integration empowered a rival superpower without promoting political liberalization. According to the Economic Policy Institute, the U.S. lost 3.7 million manufacturing jobs from 2001 to 2018 due to the trade deficit with China, especially in electronics, textiles, furniture, and machinery. The Clinton administration compounded the problem by lobbying Congress to grant China permanent normal trade relations, PNTR status, in 2000 and negotiating China's accession to the World Trade Organization, WTO. By 2022, over 80% of U.S. consumer electronics, including iPhones and laptops, are made in China. Entire sectors, electronics, apparel, toys, and furniture, saw 50 to 80% of production offshored. Some estimates suggest 25 to 35% of U.S. manufacturing supply chains have relied heavily on China, especially for consumer goods. The Green New Deal and middle-class quality of life. Aggressive climate policies tied to the Green New Deal have hurt the middle class by increasing costs and reducing quality of life. Efforts to phase out fossil fuels and promote renewable energy have driven up utility, heating, fuel, and transportation expenses due to the high costs of renewable infrastructure and backup systems. Traditional industries like oil, gas, coal, and manufacturing, once reliable sources of middle-class jobs with good pay and benefits, are being replaced by green jobs that often offer lower wages and fewer protections, further weakening economic stability for these families. Housing affordability has also worsened as green building mandates, such as solar panels, EV charging stations, and strict energy codes, increase the cost of new homes and remodels. At the same time, middle-class taxpayers are burdened with funding these massive green initiatives through higher taxes and inflation, as government spending grows to cover subsidies, infrastructure, and social programs. Additional proposals to ban gas-powered cars and push for expensive electric vehicles add further financial strain, while expanded public transit options often fail to serve suburban and rural communities where many middle-class families live. New environmental regulations also create significant challenges for middle-class small businesses, farmers, and independent contractors. Compliance costs, emissions rules, and land use restrictions slow growth, increase expenses, or force some businesses to close. Farmers face mounting costs for equipment upgrades and regulatory compliance, making it harder for them to survive. Altogether, these green policies, while aimed at fighting climate change, have placed an outsized economic burden on the middle class, eroding their financial security and quality of life. The middle class under stress. The American middle class is facing increasing pressure due to a combination of weakened law enforcement, progressive judicial policies, and open border immigration. Public safety, education, and housing, the core pillars of middle-class stability, are under strain as political and budgetary shifts discourage proactive policing. The rise in property crimes, theft, drug use, and homelessness has led to increased insurance rates and growing concerns about community safety. Additionally, a wave of progressive judges and district attorneys has prioritized leniency over accountability, allowing repeat offenders to cycle through the system, further undermining neighborhood security. Immigration policies that encourage open borders have overwhelmed public resources, particularly in education and healthcare. Overcrowded schools, strained social services, and rising housing costs have left middle-class families struggling to maintain their quality of life. Meanwhile, permissive policies on homelessness and drug use have contributed to encampments in residential areas, diminishing the safety and stability of once thriving communities. As public schools face declining academic standards and discipline issues, many middle-class families find themselves unable to afford private schooling or relocation, reinforcing the growing challenges they face. Summary: the middle class serves as the backbone of the United States constitutional republic, providing the economic stability, social cohesion, and civic engagement necessary for the system to function as intended. Rooted in principles of individual liberty, limited government, and representation, the U.S. Constitution relies on an informed and empowered citizenry capable of participating in self-governance. Historically, the middle class has embodied these ideals, balancing the influence of both the wealthy elite and the impoverished, thereby ensuring that power is not concentrated in the hands of a few. Their economic productivity drives innovation and growth, while their broad tax contributions fund essential public services, education, infrastructure, and defense, critical elements that uphold the republic. Destroying the middle class weakens the very foundation of this system. As the economic gap widens and the middle class shrinks, political polarization intensifies, social mobility declines, and faith in democratic institutions erodes. Without a strong middle class to act as a stabilizing force, the nation risks sliding toward oligarchy or populist authoritarianism, where governance serves the interests of the few at the expense of the many. The erosion of this vital demographic undermines not only the economy, but also the constitutional principles of fairness, representation, and equal opportunity, threatening the long-term survival of the American Republic itself. A leading industrialist once said, "You can always find a cheaper source to manufacture a product outside your own factory. But eventually your customer will ask, 'Why should I buy from you when I can go directly to the source?' Leaving you with nothing. The United States must decide what it truly stands for, protect it, or risk losing everything including the nation. The choice comes down to supporting populist policies that strengthen the middle class and uphold the Founding Fathers' vision of a constitutional republic, or embracing progressive socialism, which can lead to an oligarchic system where a small, elite ruling class controls the state and dictates economic and social policy under the guise of socialist principles.